Okay, for those of you that are asking about how I made my rotisserie for my Ooni Fyra pizza oven, I will include in the description the links to the items that I bought. I bought everything off Amazon that I needed to. Requires you to fabricate some parts out of I had some scrap steel laying around, and I do have a MIG welder, so I was able to weld up some pieces. I'll try to get a more detailed drawing of the actual mount that I used to mount the bearing and the motor. But the pizza stone is just a 13-inch round pizza stone. Recently cooked on it, obviously. But on the bottom of the stone, the only modifications I made to it is I made some little divots in it with just a regular drill bit, and that is to correspond with the this is the, I guess you'd call it the platen that I use, which is the part that the stone actually sits on. And this is just basically a 7¼ inch circular saw blade that I just cut all the teeth off of, and I've made these little nipples here that so here's just a quick image of the how the thrust bearing sits in there and how this piece rotates on the thrust bearing. The radial bearing that's inside this tube I put in there only to provide some a resistance for the stone to want to warp or wobble inside the oven when it gets warm. So now that shaft is supported by two bearings, the thrust bearing on the top as well as the radial bearing inside, and that holds the pizza stone nice and flat for the duration of my cooks. And you can see that spins relatively easily just with my finger. And you can see inside this piece here, I don't know if you can see it really good with the light. I'll try and move it around a little bit. That's where the set screw goes, and the motor shaft goes right up through the bottom here. And then that set screw goes in there and locks the motor into the shaft. And I will go ahead and put that together. Okay, so now you can see I've installed the set screw that attaches the motor to the shaft, and there's an Allen wrench hanging out because it's just an Allen cap screw that's in there. And when I take the wrench out, everything will spin nicely. And you can see between the motor and the actual mount itself, there's a little bit of a gap, and that's where I have these little brass washers here to kind of eat up that space or take up that space, so that the platen and the thrust washer that it rides on, or excuse me, the thrust bearing that it rides on, will constantly be in contact with no play in it. And I'll go ahead and put those in and screw the motor on. Okay, so I have the whole assembly together now, and the device needs to be installed on the unit because it has to go together in pieces because of the way that the shaft goes through this piece and the way it mounts onto the oven itself. So in the future, if I'm doing this again, I would make this piece a little bit shorter, also make the shaft a little bit shorter, and eliminate the need for those little brass washers that are underneath there to eat up that space. But right now, everything spins with the little motor, and it's just a 110 volt motor. And again, this is how that you would see it on the, or in the oven. All the little nodules line up, and the piece sits in the oven just like that. Yeah, just like that. So it's nice and secure, and the 110 volt motor provides the rotation. It spins at about 3 to 4 RPMs per minute. I think that, 5 to 6 RPMs per minute. You could get one that goes slower, but this seems to do the job for me really well. And it's just a 110 volt plug that has an on-off switch. So, and that's pretty much it. I'll try to get together some drawings for this, but it's pretty straightforward. Anyway, for those of you that wanted to see, this is it.